the father yelling for help, please help me, I don't want to die. And it just carried on down. And I mean, it looks like he was trying to find an open door.
A teenager is facing murder and attempted murder charges, accused of stabbing his parents Sunday night, killing one of them. Hal Sherrick with reaction from a next-door neighbor, plus the very latest on this investigation.
This was the scene on Augustine Drive Monday morning, more than 12 hours after deputies say a 17-year-old boy stabbed both his parents. The crime scene was spread across half the block and into several neighboring yards.
Our male, who is still in critical condition but is hopefully going to survive, he was running to houses trying to get some help.
Investigators say the teen and his parents apparently got into an argument over disciplinary actions. Deputies say it then turned violent, with the boy stabbing both of his parents inside and outside the home.
On a quiet summer evening in a peaceful Alabama neighborhood, everything seemed ordinary. Families were settling in after the holiday weekend. Children were home for the summer, and nothing hinted that one household was about to become the scene of an unimaginable tragedy. Then, the silence was broken by desperate cries for help. A gravely wounded man ran from house to house, begging neighbors to save his life, while just yards away, his wife lay fatally injured outside the home they had built together. As deputies rushed to the scene, the horrifying reality that unfolded stunned even seasoned investigators. The person accused of carrying out the attack wasn't a stranger or an intruder. It was someone from inside the family itself. What could have transformed an ordinary disagreement into an act of devastating violence? Were there warning signs hidden beneath the family's seemingly normal life? Or did everything unravel in a matter of minutes? This is the heartbreaking story of Samantha Baker. Hello and welcome to Only Crime Stories. Before we continue, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss a new case. Before her name appeared in headlines across Alabama, Samantha Baker was known simply as a wife, a mother, a military veteran, and a real estate professional. At 37 years old, she had built a life centered on family, service, and the routines that come with raising two teenage sons. Friends and acquaintances saw someone who balanced work with home life while remaining active in her local community. Years earlier, Samantha served in the U.S. Army National Guard and Army Reserve, where she met the man who would later become her husband, Lance Baker. Their shared military background became an important part of their relationship, shaping the values they carried into family life. After settling in the Daphne area, they worked to create a stable home for their children, surrounded by neighbors who viewed them as an ordinary family. Professionally, Samantha built a career in real estate, helping clients navigate one of the biggest decisions of their lives. Outside of work, she often shared moments from everyday life with friends online. Family celebrations, church activities, milestones involving her children, and lighthearted parenting jokes painted the picture of a busy mother navigating the challenges of raising teenagers. Like many parents, she occasionally acknowledged that parenting was not always easy, but her posts consistently reflected pride in her family and hope for their future. Nothing visible from the outside suggested that the Bakers would soon become the focus of a homicide investigation. Their home stood in a quiet neighborhood where serious violent crime was uncommon, and those who knew the family had little reason to expect that an ordinary summer weekend would end in tragedy. But behind the familiar routines of daily life, tensions were beginning to surface. What exactly caused those tensions to escalate remains one of the central questions investigators would attempt to answer. To understand how everything unraveled, it's necessary to look closely at the events leading up to July 5th, 2026. As investigators began reconstructing the family's final days, they looked beyond the violence itself and focused on the relationships inside the Baker household. Public records and interviews described a family that appeared stable from the outside. Yet like many homes with teenagers, disagreements over rules and discipline were part of everyday life. Lance Baker had spent decades serving in the U.S. Army Reserve, eventually becoming a battalion commander. His military career reflected structure, responsibility, and discipline, qualities that also shaped life at home. Samantha shared many of those values through her own military background, and together they raised 2 sons in the Belfast community near Daphne. Their oldest son, Brandon, was 17 years old and preparing to enter his senior year of high school. Very little about his personal life has been released publicly, and investigators have not identified a documented history of violent criminal behavior before this case. The family's younger son was not at the residence when the attack occurred, a fact that would later spare him from witnessing the events firsthand. As detectives gathered statements, another detail emerged through neighbors. One resident claimed there had been an earlier disagreement between Samantha and Brandon on the day of the attack, reportedly involving Facebook posts that Brandon believed referred to him, where she said, "Gentle parenting is for gentle children. My thugs will be handled accordingly." Authorities have never confirmed that account as the motive, but became one of several pieces of information examined alongside the official investigation. Whether that earlier dispute had any connection to what happened later remains uncertain. What is known is that, as the day continued, another confrontation developed inside the Baker home. By the evening of July 5th, the focus of the investigation narrowed to the final hours inside the Baker residence. According to investigators, another dispute developed between Brandon Baker and his parents. Unlike the earlier disagreement described by a neighbor, authorities identified this confrontation as one involving disciplinary issues within the home. Exactly how the conversation unfolded has not been made public. Investigators have not released detailed witness statements or a complete timeline from inside the house, leaving many moments known only to those who were present. What authorities do say is that the situation changed rapidly from a family argument into a violent attack. During the confrontation, Brandon allegedly armed himself with a kitchen knife. Detectives believe both Samantha and Lance Baker were attacked inside the residence. The precise order of events, including who was injured first and how long the struggle lasted, has not been disclosed through court records or official statements. Evidence later indicated that the violence was not confined to a single room. At some point during the incident, the struggle moved beyond the interior of the home. Investigators later examined blood evidence found both inside the residence and outside on the property, suggesting that at least one victim attempted to escape as the attack continued. For detectives, the changing locations of the evidence became an important part of reconstructing the sequence of events. Every bloodstain, every witness account, and every piece of physical evidence helped establish that the confrontation did not end where it began. What investigators discovered next suggested the violence did not remain contained within the Baker home. Physical evidence showed that the incident extended beyond the interior, creating a larger scene that required detectives to examine not only the residence, but also the surrounding property. As the confrontation continued, Samantha and Lance Baker are believed to have tried to get away from the attack. Evidence documented by investigators indicated movement from inside the house to the outside, where additional bloodstains mark the path taken during the final moments of struggle. The exact route has not been publicly reconstructed in full, but authorities confirmed that the scene stretched into neighboring yards. When first responders arrived, they found Samantha suffering from multiple stab wounds. Emergency personnel attempted life-saving measures, but she was pronounced dead at the scene. Her death transformed what had begun as a domestic violence call into a homicide investigation. Lance Baker, despite sustaining severe injuries himself, managed to leave the immediate area. According to witness accounts, he sought help from nearby homes while bleeding heavily. Neighbors later described seeing him desperately trying to reach someone who could call for assistance. Those observations later became valuable witness statements as detectives worked to establish the sequence of events. The size of the crime scene required investigators to carefully document each location where evidence was found. Every photograph, blood sample, and witness interview added another piece to the timeline officers were attempting to reconstruct. While emergency responders focused on the victims outside, deputies still had another critical situation to address. The person accused of carrying out the attack remained at the residence, and the next moments would determine how the case moved from an active emergency to a criminal investigation. As emergency medical personnel worked outside the home, law enforcement officers turned their attention to what was happening inside the residence. The immediate priority was determining whether there was an ongoing threat and ensuring no one else was in danger. According to investigators, Brandon Baker remained at the property after the attack. Authorities later stated that he called 911 following the incident and stayed at the residence until deputies arrived. The contents of that call have not been released publicly, but it became one of several key pieces of evidence collected during the investigation. Deputies approached the home with limited information, knowing only that a fatal stabbing had occurred and that another victim had suffered critical injuries. They took Brandon into custody without any additional violence being reported. With the scene secured, investigators were able to begin the methodical process of documenting what had taken place.
Y'all, this is absolutely terrible. A South Alabama teen has been charged with murder and attempted murder, and this was after he brutally stabbed both of his parents last night on Sunday, July 5th. According to reports, the mother was 37-year-old Samantha Baker, and she tragically died from the attack. The father is 46-year-old Lance Baker, and he is now reportedly in stable condition, but initial reports said he was in critical condition. He was flown to a hospital. He had to be airlifted after the stabbing. This occurred in Baldwin County, Alabama, and Daphne. Their 17-year-old son was the suspect. Neighbors have since told news outlets they never saw this coming. There was no indication that the teen could or would do something like this. One neighbor has since told news outlets that her home security footage picked up Lance, the father, shouting, "Help me," at around 8:35 p.m. last night. He then started screaming that he didn't want to die. The attack then occurred over the next 5 to 7 minutes. It was said Lance, the father, ran from his teen son, but the teen followed his dad to different homes, and he eventually got to him and stabbed him multiple times. Lance was finally able to get away from the attack.
Crime scene specialists examined every area connected to the incident. Inside the house, they photographed evidence, collected biological samples, and searched for items believed to have been used during the attack. Outside, investigators expanded the perimeter to include portions of neighboring properties where additional evidence had been located. The unusually large crime scene reflected how far the confrontation had extended beyond the home itself. At the same time, detectives began interviewing neighbors, first responders, and anyone who may have witnessed events before or after the attack. Although investigators had identified a suspect almost immediately, one question remained unresolved. Would it cause an argument inside the Baker home to escalate into a fatal act of violence? That question would become the central focus of the investigation that followed. With the scene fully processed and the suspect in custody, investigators shifted their attention to determining exactly what had happened and what evidence could support the charges. Although the incident occurred within a relatively short period of time, detectives were careful not to draw conclusions before examining every available source of information. The Baldwin County Sheriff's Office described the case as an isolated domestic incident, stating there was no indication that anyone outside the Baker family had been involved. That finding allowed investigators to concentrate on reconstructing the sequence of events inside and around the residence. Physical evidence formed the foundation of the investigation. Detectives documented the locations of blood evidence throughout the property, compared witness accounts with the scene itself, and gathered items believed to be connected to the attack. At the same time, neighbors were interviewed about anything they had seen or heard before deputies arrived, including activity earlier in the day that might help establish a timeline. Even with many investigative details withheld, prosecutors concluded that they had sufficient evidence to move forward. Because of the seriousness of the allegations, Brandon Baker, despite being 17 years old at the time of the incident, was charged as an adult with murder in Samantha Baker's death and attempted murder for the attack on Lance Baker. The investigation entered a new phase, where the focus would shift from the crime scene to the courtroom. Following his arrest, Brandon Baker entered the criminal justice system, facing allegations that carried the most serious consequences under Alabama law. Prosecutors announced that the case would proceed in adult court, reflecting the severity of the charges rather than his age alone. He was formally charged with 1 count of murder in connection with Samantha Baker's death and 1 count of attempted murder for the stabbing of Lance Baker. At this stage of the case, the charges represented allegations that prosecutors intended to prove in court, while the judicial process would determine whether the evidence met the legal standard required for a conviction. During the initial court proceedings, bond was set at $1 million. The decision meant Brandon would remain in custody unless that amount could be posted under the conditions established by the court. Beyond those early hearings, only limited information about the prosecution's strategy or the defense's position had been released publicly. As the legal case moved forward, investigators continued organizing evidence that could later be introduced during future proceedings. Witness statements, forensic findings, and documentation collected from the crime scene would all become part of the material reviewed by attorneys and, eventually, presented before a judge or jury if the case proceeded to trial. Meanwhile, the community continued searching for answers that had yet to emerge. Many of the most significant details, including the complete sequence of events inside the home and Brandon's account of what occurred, remained outside the public record. Those unanswered questions ensured that, even after an arrest and formal charges, the investigation was far from complete. Although investigators identified a suspect within hours and criminal charges were filed soon afterward, the publicly available record still leaves important gaps. Those unanswered questions continue to shape both the investigation and the legal proceedings. One of the largest unknowns is the exact sequence of events inside the Baker home. Authorities have confirmed that an argument preceded the attack, but they have not disclosed how the confrontation unfolded minute by minute or what was specifically said before violence erupted. As a result, many details remain known only to the people who were present. Another unresolved issue involves a reported disagreement earlier that day. While one neighbor claimed Brandon and Samantha argued about Facebook posts, investigators have never confirmed that account as a contributing factor. Whether that incident had any connection to the later violence, or whether it was entirely unrelated, has not been established through official findings. The condition of Lance Baker may also prove significant. As the only surviving victim of the attack, his testimony could become one of the most important pieces of evidence if he is able to describe what happened inside the home. The investigation continues alongside the court process. While many facts have already been established, the full story has yet to emerge, and the next stage of the case may determine whether those remaining questions are finally answered. As of the latest publicly available information, the criminal case against Brandon Baker remains active. Brandon continues to face charges of murder in the death of Samantha Baker and attempted murder in connection with the stabbing of Lance Baker. Prosecutors have indicated that the case will proceed through the adult criminal justice system. At this stage, no public trial date or plea has been announced, and many filings that typically provide greater insight into a case have yet to become available. Lance Baker survived the attack, but suffered critical injuries. His recovery remains an important aspect of the case, both for his family and for the ongoing legal proceedings. Whether he will eventually testify, and what information he may be able to provide about the events inside the home, remains unknown. For investigators, the physical evidence, witness interviews, and forensic findings collected during the early stages of the investigation continue to form the foundation of the prosecution's case. Additional details are expected to emerge only as the judicial process moves forward and more records become public. The death of Samantha Baker brought an abrupt end to the life of a mother, military veteran, and professional who had spent years building a future with her family. What happened inside that home on July 5th, 2026, changed every member of the Baker family in ways that cannot be reversed. The Baker family case illustrates how investigators often begin with a scene that appears straightforward, but gradually uncover a more complex series of events. Within hours of the attack, authorities had identified a suspect, secured the residence, and collected evidence that formed the basis of a criminal prosecution. Yet even with an arrest made almost immediately, many of the circumstances surrounding the violence remain outside the public record. The available evidence has established several key facts. Samantha Baker lost her life on July 5th, 2026. Lance Baker survived despite suffering critical injuries. Their 17-year-old son, Brandon Baker, was arrested at the scene and later charged as an adult with murder and attempted murder. Those facts are not in dispute. What remains uncertain are the conversations, decisions, and moments that transformed a family dispute into a fatal criminal case. As the legal process continues, additional testimony, forensic evidence, and court filings may provide a more complete understanding of what occurred inside the Baker home. Until then, the public record offers only part of the story, leaving many questions unanswered while the judicial system determines the outcome. For the Baker family, the consequences of that evening extend far beyond the courtroom. A mother is gone, A father continues recovering from life-threatening injuries, and a criminal case now stands between the known facts and the details that have yet to emerge. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more true crime stories. See you in the next case.